The Mike Wagner Show is powered by Sonic Web Studios. If you're looking to start or upgrade your online presence, visit www.sonicwebstudios.com for all of your online needs. Sonic Web Studios specializes in custom web design, app development, social networking, search engine optimization, domain registration, email marketing, online stores, and more. Since our birth, we have been designing and developing immaculate websites and providing web solutions which are a cut above the rest. As a leading web designing enterprise, we have a team of extremely talented web designers who are well-focused and have the experience of working on multiple web developing platforms such as PHP, Magento, custom WordPress, and more. Sonic Web Studios has been helping businesses of all kinds, whether big, small, established, or startup, impress their audiences with exemplary web solutions. We don't just create beautiful and functional websites. We give you a complete online solution with the main goal of enhancing your yearly revenues. We aim to give your business the online exposure and brand acknowledgement that will help you in achieving increased conversions leading to profitable sales. Call 1-800-303-3960 or visit us online at www.sonicwebstudios.com to get started today. Mention the Mike Wagner Show and get 20% off your project. Sonic Web Studios. Take your image to the next level.
It's now time for the Mike Wagner Show, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. The Mike Wagner Show can be heard on Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, YouTube, iTunes, Anchor FM, Radio Public, and the MikeWagnerShow.com. Mike brings you great guests and interesting people from all across the globe. So sit back, relax, and enjoy another great episode of the Mike Wagner Show.
Hey everybody, it's Mike from the Mike Wagner Show, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. Looking on a professional website without breaking your budget? Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs that blow the competition away. Call today at 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960. Or email to support@sonicwebstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show. Get 20% off your first project. Sonic Web Studios. Take your image to the next level. Also, the Mike Wagner Show can be heard on the MikeWagnerShow.com. You can check our Facebook page at Facebook.com/The Mike Wagner Show. You can download and listen on Facebook, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Also on Anchor FM, Radio Public, iTunes, Google Play, and over 25 podcast platforms. Take the Mike Wagner Show with you on any mobile device. Subscribe to the Mike Wagner Show on the YouTube channel. Also follow the Mike Wagner Show on Instagram and Twitter today. We're here with a wonderful musician who is part of a group called the Little Wretches, and some call him the Littlest Wretch, but after hearing this guy, he's going to be the most powerful of all. He's got a new album out called Undesirables, and Anarchists will be playing one of their tunes in just a minute. And of course, from what I'm told, this guy's well-spoken, very educated, and yes, he's also an English teacher as well, too, and hopefully he doesn't correct my English and gives us some great stories, and this group has been doing it for quite a number of decades. So live, ladies and gentlemen, from the Plush Studio somewhere in the U.S., part of the Little Wretches, ladies and gentlemen, the very well-spoken, very talented Bob Wagner. Bob, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for joining us today.
Oh, no. Now I have to be articulate and well-spoken. I'm not going to be able to say, No.
I was kidding, by the way.
I'll have to speak in complete sentences and throw in maybe a couple of multi-syllable words.
You don't need to do that. I was just messing with you here. So of course, we mentioned that you're an English teacher, and of course, well-spoken, and you're also part of a group called the Little Wretches, and guys been around since the 80s and 90s, and you also have a new album out called Undesirables and Anarchists, and go over a little bit of history of the Little Wretches, just starting off, the Littlest Wretch, and also Precursor, No Shelter, and Born with a Gift, and more, and of course, you being born with a gift. Tell us about how you first got started.
Well, from the time I was little, I've always loved listening to music. And, when in my generation, when we were growing up, our babysitters were usually family members, an aunt, an uncle, or maybe a next door neighbor or one of the teenagers in the neighborhood. And instead of playing video games, which is a common thing for kids to do now, we would get the record player and put on vinyl LPs or, 7-inch RPM records. So my favorite activity when I was growing up was listening to records. And my cousins and I, we were so extreme about it that we would copy the addresses of the record companies from the record labels so that we could write letters to the record companies to ask for a recording contract, because we were told that's how it's done.
Wow, that's something.
We never got a reply. And when I got a little bit older, I had to, just by the weirdest set of circumstances, Mike, my family kind of just disintegrated. I had this ideal childhood, and then when I got to be about 13, 14 years old, the whole thing just fell apart, and by no fault of their own, by circumstances that just seem inevitable in retrospect. My mother disappeared on me, my father disappeared on me, and I was basically an abandoned kid living in the house that I grew up in. Mm-hmm. And, I was managing to get my butt to school and keep my grades up. But I actually, instead of asking for help, because I kind of felt like if I ask anybody for help, something weird is going to happen, like they might try to make me live in a foster home. So I actually survived by shoplifting for food, and I did that for a couple of months. And eventually the authorities did get involved, and I had to go live with my grandmother. But when, the people that are responsible for caring for you let you down, and the people that you trust let you down, especially at that age, I just became a very angry, I'm basically a nice person, but I still became very angry and questioned everything. So I'd like to say, I was completely lost, and that's partially where the name of the band comes from, Amazing Grace, how great the sounds to save a wretch like me. I once was lost. Well, there was nobody more lost than me. So when you're lost, what do? You retrace your steps to where you last knew where you were. And for me, it's like, well, when was the last time I was happy? The last time I was happy was when I was playing music. So really, from the time I was maybe 14, 15 years old, I'd like to say that, rock and roll music and folk music saved my life. It gave me a reason to exist. And that's really all I ever wanted to do. I'm a relatively intelligent person, so when the bands always had a downturn and we weren't really making any money or playing a lot of gigs, it was easy for me to go back to school and take a few more classes. But for me, going to college was just an excuse to tread water, to figure out how I could be in a band. And, somewhere along the line, I got a master's degree, and I've done a lot of studying about alternative education. So that's what I teach now. I work with at-risk kids with anxiety disorders, autism, behavioral disorders, and people talk about how hard it is to be a teacher. Give me a break. I'm the smartest person in the room with kids that look to me for attention and approval. It is not hard for me. I can't believe they give me money to do it. And it gives me the freedom to play music, which is what I've always been. I'm a writer, performer, and teacher. I teach through songs, and I tell stories through songs. That's my medium.
Mm-hmm. And of course, how'd you get the Little Wretches started as well? Going back to the very beginning up till now.
Well, when I first, there was a time from from the time I was 15 to 18, all I did was write and play my guitar. I was pretty much an antisocial person. People thought I was very quiet, but I was always listening. And I was really good at eavesdropping on conversations, and I had a memory, like a photographic memory, but a phonographic memory. I could eavesdrop on your conversation and then be able to write down every word you'd said for the last 15 minutes.
Wow,
so
interesting.
I had a knack for capturing language and putting it into songs. But again, I wasn't, I'm not that much of a singer. I'm not that much of a guitar player. So I figured, okay, what I'm going to have to be is a poet. But it turned out my college roommate, a guy named John Creighton, was the most talented musician I ever met. As fate would have it, after finally crawling out of the hole that I'd been in as a teenager. I finally was happy, on top of the world, getting a lot of praise as a writer from fellow students and professors. And then I got stricken with a rare form of cancer, which back then was often fatal. Now, I got some doctors that were on the cutting edge of the research, and they got me on an experimental program that turned out to be successful. But one night I was sitting with my roommate in a bar, miserable, thinking, oh my, I might not live. And I just looked at him and said, we need to start a band. And that's where we started the band called No Shelter. Mm-hmm. And one of our most well-known songs is actually a song called Brooks Robinson's Camp. Do you know who Brooks Robinson was?
Yes, he was a famous ball player for the Baltimore Orioles.
Yeah. Now, there's also a Brooks Robinson who was he was on the board of directors of PNC Corporation, Pittsburgh National Bank, and we met after our band rehearsals. We used to hang out in a coffee shop, and it had free refills on coffee and stayed open 24 hours. Mm-hmm. So we'd be there all night drinking coffee. And who else is there all night? Students cramming for exams and homeless people looking for a place to stay. And we were like a magnet for homeless people. And this one homeless guy came up to us, and he was, going on this rant. He had been a veteran, apparently, and he went on this rant about how he was trying to get back to Brooks Robinson's camp, which was a really nice place. And they would let you in even if you weren't a vet, but they always had food, plenty of hot coffee, and they didn't give you no electroshock. So we took his rant and we turned it into a song. So we were one of the first wave of punk rock bands in Pittsburgh, which is where I'm from, Western Pennsylvania. And punk rock, I know people think of mohawk haircuts and, really aggressive sounding music, but really for us, punk rock gave us a license to get on the stage. No experience, no ability, that's all right. As long as you feel like you have something to say, give yourself a name, book yourself a gig. And then it turned out that, we really did have some talent. No Shelter went on to become the Little Wretches. Little Wretches, when we started, was folkier. I kind of started that with my little brother who played the violin. And in addition to, it was created as a vehicle for my writing. Because, as they say, every picture needs a frame, every story needs a context. A lot of times my songs kind of feel like they don't fit in around other people's songs, but if you set them up right and frame them right and put them in the right context, you can tell some pretty sophisticated and powerful stories. So that's really the Little Wretches has been the vehicle for my writing. I'm not a playwright. I've written plays, I've written drama, but I've written essays, I've published book reviews and so on. But my favorite medium is the one that I connected with when I was young. The song. Writers like Bob Dylan, John Lennon. I really like a songwriter named Lou Reed because he's also very literate. Ray Davies of the Kinks. So those are the models that have inspired me. And we've never stopped. I'd like to think of our body of work. That sounds pretentious, doesn't it? They play in this obscure rock band called the Little Wretches, but they think they have a body of work. But, I'd like to think that all of our albums work together. We have a lot of different styles, a lot of different sounds, but if you take the whole thing together, it really it's something you can get into. It has a worldview, tells a story, and it tells the story of people who people who deserve to have their stories told, who might not have a voice of their own.
Mm-hmm. It sounds amazing as well, too, and we'll talk about the next era as well, too, and some of your other influences. But first, listen to The Mike Wagner Show at themikewagnershow.com, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. Look on a professional website without breaking your budget. Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs that blow the competition away. Call today, 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960, or email to support@sonicwebstudios.com. sonicwebstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show, get 20% off your first project. Sonic Web Studios, take your image to the next level. Also, the Mike Wagner Show can be heard on the MikeWagnerShow.com. You can check our Facebook page at Facebook.com/The Mike Wagner Show. You can download and listen on Facebook, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Also on Anchor FM, Radio Public, iTunes, Google Play, and over 25 podcast platforms. Take the Mike Wagner Show with you on any mobile device. Subscribe to the Mike Wagner Show on the YouTube channel. Also follow the Mike Wagner Show on Instagram and Twitter today. We're here with singer-songwriter Bob Wagner of the Little Wretches here on the Mike Wagner Show, based out of Western Pennsylvania, growing up in the Pittsburgh area. And an amazing story on how you grow up and just coming together with the Little Wretches, being part in Pittsburgh. And what's kind of stood out to me is that I've had experiences, too, that you found the group while you're drinking beer before the Pittsburgh Steelers facing the LA Rams in the Super Bowl. I have my occasions where it's like, I encountered experiences a week before the Super Bowl and just all these events that are just happening. It's just how things just come together.
Yeah. It's weird. If you go through the history of the band, the original version of the band, if I listed all of my ex-band members who've passed away. Like I said, I founded the band with my brother. My brother is gone. Mm-hmm. The original bass player, Ed Heidel, is gone. My original musical partner, John Creighton from No Shelter, who also participated in the Little Wretches, he's gone. And none of these guys are gone because they had drug problems or anything like that. It was unusual illnesses, cancer, diabetes, congenital heart problems. So I feel like, and they invested huge portions of their life in helping me make, realize and articulate my vision. So, I'm almost very committed. I feel like I have to insist on being heard to vindicate the sacrifices that they made. But I've come across amazing people, and each person who's been in the band, of incredible stories that's, I think it's my obligation to tell, and I'm still working on telling the stories. Amazing people.
Mm-hmm. It sounds amazing as well, too. And you talked about many of your influences being in songwriting, authors, and everything. And who are some of your favorite, other favorite songwriters and authors and other musicians growing up?
Well, for me, I think the first piece of music I can ever remember hearing was the Beatles. My mother had almost all the Beatles albums. And when she kind of abandoned the family out of necessity, she left the Beatles albums for me. So there was a time in my life when, the only thing I owned was like 11 Beatles albums, and I listened to them all the time. And one, I talked about how I actually, made a conscious decision. When was the last time I was happy? The last time I was happy was when I was into music. I went to high school at a huge campus. It was set up campus style with multiple buildings. We had about 1,000 students per class. So on our campus, we may have had 4,000, 5,000 kids. So it was easy to disappear. I just remember one day saying, I'm out of here, I'm leaving. And I walked, there was a shopping mall within walking distance of our high school. And I walked over there, spent the afternoon looking at rock and roll magazines. And I saw a picture of Miles Davis and Lou Reed. Miles Davis, the famous jazz musician. And I think the caption was something like, jazz legend Miles Davis with underground legend Lou Reed. And I'd never heard Miles Davis. I probably had heard Walk on the Wild Side by Lou Reed, but something about that picture and that caption just kind of led me to believe there's a whole other world that is hidden from me. Everything I've been taught is a lie, and it's up to me to discover the truth. So I set out on, schooling myself in music, listening to jazz, listening to, I'd find an artist, and then I'd explore their influences. I think the first albums I bought were in a discount bin at a store. I got an album by The Who, and an album by T-Rex. And next thing you know, I mean, it took me a few years, and if I ever got any money, I spent it on albums. I soon had every album by the Kinks, every album by the Who, the Rolling Stones, David Bowie, and Lou Reed. But I was particularly drawn to the people that would be considered the rock poets.
Mm-hmm.
There's some Patti Smith that I like a lot. She's in the rock. I mean, there's great writers. Bruce Springsteen is a great writer. My worldview is a little bit different than his, but what an incredible writer he is. Just phenomenal literary talent if he wasn't in the music business.
Mm-hmm. And Bruce Springsteen was amazing. I remember watching the movie. What was it? I'm just trying to think. What was it? Born to Run or something like that? It was the latest movie that was out. Yeah. Yes, and I watched it and I thought that was just amazing. And it was just in another country. It's like, the London area, somewhat into Bruce Springsteen, but a family coming from Pakistan, they never heard it. And, it was like Bruce Springsteen was talking to these people. So that's what it sounds like. It's like, most of these writers are actually talking to people, unlike what I've noticed is that most songwriters out there are out just to make money, but it seems like a rare gift, and I'm glad you're keeping this up. You're writing songs, and you guys are, just to talk to the people.
Hey, are you familiar with the playwright August Wilson?
I've heard very little, but I'm not familiar with his works.
August Wilson, is an African-American playwright. He's from Pittsburgh, my hometown, and his path, even though, he's a generation older than me, his path very similar to mine. At a certain point when he was in high school, he basically just stopped going. But instead of, getting into trouble, he went to the library every day and read books, and then he would go to coffee shops and restaurants, and just like me, he would eavesdrop and he would write poetry. And there's a whole school of black writers. One of my teachers when I was at the University of Pittsburgh, a guy named Rob Penny, same thing. He became the head of the Black Studies Department at the University of Pittsburgh, but he never really went to high school. He went to Carnegie Library every day and read every book about Africa.
Wow.
And their plays, Rob Penny's plays and August Wilson's plays, they have a lot of natural dialogue just pulled out of ordinary life. A lot of the plots are basically people sitting around talking a lot. There's a lot of talking in their plays, but it's so full of life. The language is so full of life. And what I've noticed, when I was at the university, most, I could be a poet, but who reads poetry or other poets? Nobody really reads poetry. I wish I was a more avid reader, but the fact is I've learned more from songs than any other form. So, and I want to I don't want to preach to the converted. I want the opportunity to reach people who don't know what I know, who haven't heard what I've heard, who haven't seen what I've seen. And it seems like in intellectual circles, it's just like an echo chamber. Everybody's always talking to people who agree with them. And I feel like music gives me the opportunity to take what I have to say directly to the people and maybe reach somebody that I wouldn't reach if I was a college professor or, teaching poetry to graduate students.
That is interesting. And I was thinking about that, how you talked about some of these guys going into libraries, reading books and, writing poetry. And you had this phenomenal gift of, just capturing someone's conversation and writing it and turning it to a song. And I was thinking about me having a conversation with you. I can imagine you just writing down what you say and coming up with a song. So if you do that, that's okay with me. And, getting back to about authors and everything, what do you consider your favorite book or favorite books?
Well, you'd have to, I like the classic Victorian novels. I like Thomas Hardy's Jude the Obscure, Victor Hugo's Les Miserables and Hunchback of Notre Dame, Charles Dickens' A Tale of Two Cities. and I like a lot of Russian fiction. I like Dostoevsky and Tolstoy, Crime and Punishment by Dostoevsky, Notes from Underground, The Devils, all those classic big fat 500-page novels. I like, but I read them like poetry. Like I go through them and I find the paragraph here, the paragraph there, the little bit of dialogue there, and then I fold back the page. And when I go back to those books, I don't read it like it's a big 500-page novel. I read it like it's a little collection of poetry. My attention span is short. What's the average song? 4 minutes, 5 minutes. So if I can't read it in 4 or 5 minutes, it's a little bit too much for me. And the other thing about novels is, obviously it's fiction, and the writer has the ability to have a lot of convenient resolutions. Just at the right time, the hero shows up. Just at the right time, circumstance turns. And of course, in real life, miracles happen. Things happen that seem to have been fated, but I try to be a little bit more realistic and down to earth, and I don't feel the obligation to resolve everything. I leave a lot of things hanging, and so I don't know. That's one of my, I guess you say, mission statements is taken from a song by Lou Reed. He has a song called "I'll Be Your Mirror." Mm-hmm. And I look, what's my job as a writer? What's my job as a musician? I am a mirror. This is the Lou Reed lyric. I'll be your mirror, reflect what you are in case you don't know. And that to me is what an artist is supposed to be doing, whether you're a dancer, writer, musician. I'm reflecting the world. Now, when you look in the mirror, you might stand there and admire yourself, or you might see your flaws. What you do with your reflection is your business, but my job is to give you a reflection. So I hope that people will see slices of reality in our songs.
Mm-hmm. And of course, speaking about reality and songs as well, too, you also have your album out as well, too, called Undesirables and Anarchists. And go ahead and tell us a little bit about the album.
Well, when that album came together, I'm a pretty good songwriter. So I had this batch of songs ready to go, and some of those songs had been road tested. The Little Wretches had already been around for a while, and we'd even taken stabs at recording some of them previously, but they hadn't been widely heard. So I was able to re-record some songs that I already knew these are good songs, they work. And we had just a killer little band, the singer, Rosa Colucci, just a phenomenal talent and energy. The bass player, John Carson, the drummer, Mike Madden, the piano player, H.K. Hillner. They're unknown, but they were like a super group. And we went into the studio. The engineer was a guy named Dave Granati. He played in a band called G-Force, or the Granati Brothers. They toured as an opening act for Van Halen.
Oh, wow.
So, he really knew his stuff. We nailed all of those songs in virtually one take. So we had these great songs, great band. It wasn't even fair. The album produced itself. And the title track, the song, All of My Friends, contains the line, all of my friends are on somebody's list of undesirables and anarchists. Like I said, I've known a lot of homeless people. I've known a lot of schizophrenic people. I've been around a lot of radical political activists. And one of my best teachers when I was in college was actually a Marxist economic professor named Dave Houston. Mm-hmm. And he had sent away for his FBI file. And he told us that when he got it, it was like a mile thick, heavily redacted, big sections blacked out. But the thing that was creepy to him was that there were transcripts of dinner conversations he'd had in restaurants. And like, well, how in the world were they spying on me while I was having dinner in a restaurant? Was somebody at the table an FBI agent, or was the waiter or waitress, or did they have a hidden microphone? So that's a lot of the imagery of the song, or just all, a line here, a line there about all of the misfits and outside. That's, if you wanted to define my my circle of friends and acquaintances, we're all people that wished we fit in, but we really don't. We might be able to pass. We might be able to pass as normal, but the world's a mystery to us, and we're trying to figure out what it is that we lack that will let us come in and join the party.
And that sounds fantastic as well, too. And you also have a few songs we can talk about as well, too. We got Silence Has Made a Liar Out of Me. You also got Poison, Almost Nightfall, and also Don't You Ever Mention My Name. We're going to play one of the tunes in just a few minutes here. And maybe you can just tell us about the first track, Silence Has Made a Liar Out of Me. And if you want to make a mention about a few of the other songs, talk about those. Go ahead. Have at it.
Sure. Well, Silence, okay. Now the meaning of silence has changed a little bit in the social context. So there's so much going on with politics right now, and you have people saying, and I was raised to believe that if you see injustice and don't act, then you're part of the problem. But now you have everybody accusing everybody of something, and that is not my point of view. But I do believe that if you see injustice and you don't speak up and you don't take action, then you didn't live up to your responsibility as a human being made in the image of God. So what I do know about myself is it's very easy for me to make big, blunt statements that just freak people out. I've had friends telling me that they refer to it as, man, you keep dropping bombs on people and you're freaking them out. What do? Just sit around and think of what's the most intense thing you can possibly say? You need to start being a little more diplomatic when you speak. So I was really writing about myself, saying, harsh words come easily to me, but when you speak harshly, you often have the opposite effect of what you're trying to accomplish. You put somebody on the defensive, and when they're on the defensive, they don't want to hear what you had to say. So I was really writing about myself there, about times when I knew that I had to say something. I didn't want to say the wrong thing, and I ended up saying nothing, and then spending the next 2 years of my life thinking, I should have said, I should have said, I should have said. So that's really what the song is about, is the need to speak when you see something wrong and not standing back and letting it happen. So that's Silence. And it's a very cool, I really like the music to the song, too. It's got some great guitar work and some great vocals. One of the other songs you mentioned, Almost Nightfall, that's a song that's kind of important to me because I mentioned that when I was a teenager, there were, my family just kind of disintegrated pretty suddenly. Both sides of my family have mental illness and addiction issues. And there was a time when pretty much any time, I'm pretty good at dissociating and living in my own little dream world. I'd come home and, everybody in the house would be screaming at each other and furniture would be breaking and stuff like that. And I finally got to where if I come home, I could almost smell the fight a block away. I'd get this little butterflies in my stomach, and I just kind of sense, something crazy is happening at home. And if I got home and something was crazy was happening, I would just walk away. So Almost Nightfall is really about wandering around all night, waiting for things to calm down at home, maybe walking past the house 3 or 4 times. And when they're finally quiet, when everybody's finally exhausted themselves and passed out, then it's safe to go in. But just needing to be away from all that craziness. So that's the story behind Almost Nightfall. I think you mentioned Don't You Ever Mention My Name.
Yes, that's another one. And then also another one I can mention, too, is Who is America? But your interpretation. But let's get to the next part about Don't Mention My Name. I mean, these are very interesting titles. I like these.
Well, Don't You Ever Mention My Name. There was a time when, we're mainly debuting songs live, right? We don't have radio. I mean, this is, I'm going back to the early part of the Little Wretches. We don't have radio to be playing our songs. And so we're introducing people to original music that they've never heard before. And I heard, now as an adult who's been through a lot, I've been to songwriting seminars where they say in a hit song, 90% of the information is familiar and no more than 10% is new. Usually the audience has the experience of it sounding very familiar to them. So I wanted to write something that sounded familiar, and I was saying, okay, we need to write, Pittsburgh is famous. We have a lot of bluesy bands, a lot of hard rock and a lot of blues. So I was trying to study up on the blues and trying to come up with imagery from Robert Johnson and Muddy Waters. And, Robert Johnson has a lot of songs about catching the train. And so I was trying to stick that in. It just so happened that me and the kids in my neighborhood, we grew up around the train tracks. Mm-hmm. Mike, you know what slag dumps are?
I've heard the term, but go ahead.
Okay, well, Pittsburgh is famous for its steel mills, right?
Yes.
Well, the byproduct of steel, right, they have to burn coal and, there's a lot of waste when they produce steel. The waste is called slag. It's like black, gray ash. Uh-huh. So the steel mills would just send trucks out, and there'd be these mountains of slag. And our parents would always warn us, don't you dare go play in the slag dumps, because if the load shifts and a mountain of slag comes down on you, you'll just be a missing boy. Nobody will ever know what happened to you. Uh-huh. But the kids in my neighborhood were so ambitious, especially when they started to become teenagers and learned the nuances of how cool drinking beer was. The kids in my neighborhood would actually hop the train track, hop a slow-moving train, go from one trestle to the next, hop off the trestle, hop off the train, and they built a little clubhouse in the slag dumps where they would have keg parties.
Huh, and interesting.
They built the clubhouse out of wooden pallets from behind a warehouse. Somebody would hop a train, somebody would hand a pallet up to him, he'd hop off down at the next stop, hand the pallet off, carry very ambitious kids. So it's basically a song about, kids, drinking their parents' beer and hiding out on the train. Train tracks are a great place to hide out. You want to get away from the world, go down to the tracks. Mm-hmm. Of course, if you've ever been along the train tracks when a freight train comes by, it is so loud, you feel the vibration in every bone of your body. Kind of a cool thing.
It makes me feel like I'm living in Pittsburgh right now. I can imagine this, and I'm getting this spirit from you, where you have the slag dumps, you got the train and climbing. It's like, I can imagine it right now, although I'm in a studio. It's like, I'm really picturing this. This is great.
Well, it's funny. I have a recurring dream set in the little hillside above the train tracks. I'll wake up in the morning, I was there again. It's kind of a composite, but a lot of adventures, usually along the train tracks. There's wooded areas and then home areas. One of my fondest memories when I was a kid, we went with some older kids. I was probably still a preschooler, maybe 5, 6 years old, and we followed some older kids down into the woods. What do you do when you go to the woods? You pick berries, right? I don't know when people learn that, Rettle or something. And then the older kids ditched us, and we got lost in the woods. Now I look at those woods now and think, what do you mean lost? The woods were only like 50 yards wide. But, little urchins that we were, we wandered out of the woods, and we ended up at an ice cream store, and there was a carload of nuns at the ice cream store, and they insisted on buying us ice cream. We're like, no, sister, we're not allowed to take anything from strangers. We're not strangers, we're sisters. Please let us buy you an ice cream cone.
And I can imagine the nuns are saying, heaven help us, please. We got to help these kids. So, or if they're like, they get turned away, oh, heaven help us. I can imagine that.
When I went to a Catholic school, so it's funny when old Catholics get together, they always talk about getting paddled by the nuns and so on. I really hate when people talk bad about the nuns. Those nuns got me ice cream, darn it. I love the nuns.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I have no problem with it as well, too. And we're going to play your song, All My Friends, in just a minute. And if we have time, we can talk about Who is America. We'll get to that, but first listen to The Mike Wagner Show at themikewagnershow.com, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. Looking at a professional website without breaking your budget? Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs that blow the competition away. Call today, 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960. Or email to support@sonicwebstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show. Get 20% off your first project. Sonic Web Studios. Take your image to the next level. Also, the Mike Wagner Show can be heard on themikewagnershow.com. You can check our Facebook page at facebook.com/The Mike Wagner Show. You can download and listen on Facebook, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Also on Anchor FM, Radio Public, iTunes, Google Play, and over 25 podcast platforms. Take the Mike Wagner Show with you on any mobile device. Subscribe to the Mike Wagner Show on the YouTube channel. Also follow the Mike Wagner Show on Instagram and Twitter today. We're here with Bob Wagner of the Little Wretches here on the Mike Wagner Show, and we just got done talking about some of their album called Undesirables and Anarchist. Right now, here's one of the cuts from the album. Here's All of My Friends right here on the Mike Wagner Show.
Turned into fanatics with terrible secrets hidden up in their attics. Closets full of skeletons and old bones they only bring out to play with when nobody's home. All of my friends are on some kind of list of undesirables and anarchists. It's not even safe to admit that you're one of my friends. All of my friends know cause and effect. They're notably known for abuse and neglect. We're natural targets, we're perfect to blame. None of my friends ever runs out of shame. All of my friends are taking some kind of rap, but your biggest weapon is your handicap. Nothing much good ever happens to none of my friends. Between the dust and the ether, walking in circles, limping along. I'm stuck in a ditch, but I'm a believer. I don't know much except right from wrong. Oh, what comedy. Oh, what torture. Oh, what stories we will tell someday, someday. Ever has to lose face. We're walking in beauty, we're walking in grace. We're marching like sheep to the slaughterhouse blade. We're the prize-winning herd at the Macy's parade. None of my friends ever made the first team. If you're going to hell, gotta go to extremes. Gently down the stream, go none of my friends. In rarefied air, with the high priest of culture, we kneel down for a
Great song by the Little Wretches called All of My Friends here on the Mike Wagner Show. And tell us more about this great song. What inspired you to write it?
Well, thank you for playing it. Mostly when I perform live these days, it's just solo with an acoustic guitar. And, of course, we're in the middle of this pandemic lockdown, so a lot of performers like me, a performance consists of sitting in front of a laptop and looking at ourselves staring back at us with no applause or anything like that, or maybe some Facebook comments flying up, little hearts and little likes and stuff. But it's so weird to play to nobody. And when I hear that song, I just yearn to be back in front of a live audience with a real band. But I also have an acoustic version of that song written. Well, the opening line, all of my friends turned into fanatics with terrible secrets hidden up in their attics. Now, as I mentioned, I was a very angry kid. So when I first went to college, I fell in with people who were politically radical, and I realized I was bait for anything. The first thing that came along that told me it had an answer for how to change the world, I would have locked onto it with all of my might. It so happened for me it was, politically radical people. But, I've always had a soft spot for heretics and outsiders, people who take crazy points of view. And now the thing about terrible secrets hidden up in their attics, now that's a little bit of a cliche, but I had an aunt in the family who lived with my grandmother. And, now looking back at it as an adult, I realized, my aunt was gay. She suffered from mental illness, and she also, she never married because she didn't like men. She liked women, and she had a couple of, lifelong friends, but a pretty lonely existence. And when you're a kid, you overhear things, but you don't understand them. So I heard one of my older cousins talking about how my aunt had a skeleton up in her attic. She has it. So every time I visited, every time my aunt was my babysitter, I would insist on going up in the attic to look for the skeleton. Mm-hmm. And of course, she thought it was funny because she knew she knew it was just a joke. She knew that I didn't know what was meant by the term a skeleton in the attic. So one of the lines in the song says, your biggest weapon is your handicap. I spend a lot of time with at-risk kids and traumatized kids, and one of the things they learn how to do is take their disabilities and turn them into weapons. Mm-hmm. And that's my way of protecting myself, is refusing to let you into my world. There's also a play. At one point, I was a music director for a theater production of a Sam Shepard play called The Tooth of Crime. And one of the lead characters, the director was telling me that he'd seen a production of The Tooth of Crime where one of the lead characters, for some reason, the director had him walk with a crutch. And in the battle scenes, he would use his crutch as a weapon, because the idea, your biggest weapon is your handicap. You take your weakness and you turn it into a strength. And so, every line in the song, every little couplet, every little quatrain has something to do with being an outsider, but trying to find a way to make a life for yourself.
Mm-hmm. And it sounds like a lot of us can relate to that in just giving hope and inspiration. And, of course, one of the tracks, Who is America, right here on your album, Undesirables and Anarchist. Of course, the state of America, everybody knows what's going on. And tell us more about that song. And I guess the question I'll throw to you is, who is America these days?
Well, the funny thing about that song, Mike, is that, I wrote it ages ago. I wrote it when I was still in no shelter. So that's one of my I've been performing that song longer than a lot of people who listen to it will have been alive. That's a very old song.
Oh, my goodness.
But it just turns out to be particularly timely now. So, when we recorded this version, I actually went back to the original lyrics, because I have a couple other recorded versions of Who is America. And it's kind of from the point of view, I imagine the narrator, the character, being a woman office worker who's going to work, drags herself out of bed, gets to the office the next morning, looking at herself in the mirror, notices that her eyes are a little bit puffy, her eyelids are swollen. She can't find her. She has her pay stub, but she can't find her wallet, and just everything's going wrong. She's looking around at her fellow workers, and she just doesn't feel like she fits in. And she looks around. She might be 30 years old, but she has colleagues that might be 60 years old, and they got on that treadmill of life, blink their eyes, and 30 years have passed. So there's a lot of, I think the imagery might show a little bit of discontent. It's part of a theme that runs throughout my catalog is, you're born with a gift, and that's what you should be doing. And everything else, every moment of your life that you spend doing what you weren't meant to do is a moment of your life wasted. And I think there are a lot of people who don't realize that they had a choice. They just did what was presented to them. They did what was obvious. They ended up in a situation that just doesn't feel right, but they feel stuck there. So I think that's the main character in Who is America is just somebody who feels stuck. And then there's sort of a big bridge section where, it talks about how a lot of people are motivated by the fantasy of getting rich. But it's just a fantasy for them. They don't really go for it. They don't pursue it. I'm catching myself. You said about how articulate I was alleged to be, and now I'm saying a lot.
No, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
but the song is not so much meant to be a commentary as much as it is to be a reflection. These are people. I guess as I said, one of my big themes is, you're born with a gift, you're born with a purpose, you have a purposeful life. You need to find what that purpose is, and maybe your purpose is to raise your family and teach your children. There is no more noble purpose than that. But for some reason, we're conditioned to think that the working life is something that you need to overcome, that somehow the working life is a dead end. No, the working life is not a dead end if you're taking care of your family and raising your children to be good people. That should be something that's celebrated, not frowned upon. So it's just a portrait of America, and it's kind of timely. It's funny, there's a line in there that I wrote before the Occupy movement, this whole thing about the 99%. We need to tax the 1%. There's actually a line in that song that says, when one man strikes a rich, 99 others find deprivation, which, of course, if you understand economics, that is not how it works. Mm-hmm. But it's a line in the song that when I wrote it had absolutely nothing to do with the Occupy movement, but then the whole Occupy movement comes out of nowhere and of course is still rolling today. And when it seems like America. It's funny, you can't trust what you see in the media because, one of my jobs as a teacher and as somebody who works with children with autism is we collect data. Mm-hmm. And then you analyze the data. All I can say for sure is that the data of my life does not correspond to what is being reported to me in the news and on social media. On the news and in social media, I hear about all this division and all this dissension and all this grief and strife. In my real life, I encounter kind people who help each other, who laugh, who enjoy each other's company. People, obviously there is good and evil in the world, and there are good people and there are evil people. But for the most part, I'm around people who try really hard to get along with their neighbor and to help when somebody needs help without being asked. Mm-hmm. So that's my little rant for the day is life is good, life is precious, make the most of it.
Mm-hmm. And I'm learning a lot from you, Bob, as well, too. So we're with Bob Wagner of the Little Wretches here on the Mike Wagner Show. Just a couple of things. We'd love to have you back on. You've been absolutely fantastic and very articulate. And of course, it's just great to have you on as well, too. Looking forward to having you on again soon. And where can we find Undesirables and Anarchists at?
Okay, well, if you go to our website, www.littlewretches.com, or find us on Facebook, just look up the Little Wretches on Facebook, you can order vinyl copies. You're not going to be able to walk to your local vinyl store and find a vinyl copy, but you can order it. Likewise, you can order a CD through the website. You can get a CD. I think we're selling them for $10 or $11 or something. Mm-hmm. But mainly nowadays people download and stream. So we're on about 70 digital stores around the world. All of Amazon Digital, Apple Music, Spotify, all of that. But I would appreciate if people actually, I grew up collecting albums. Now mostly I download music, but I purchase the downloads. You could obviously go to YouTube and listen to all the songs on YouTube because they are there. But it would help me as an artist trying to make ends meet if you bought the music. But it's everywhere. Anywhere that you download music, you can find the Little Wretches.
That sounds very good. We will do so. And what can we expect from you guys in 2020, 2021, and beyond?
Well, I have a lot of unreleased stuff, and a lot of the stories that I was telling you about, the vignettes and so on that I've written, a lot of that is still unreleased. I mean, I have some stuff that is good. I've been just waiting for the right time and the right context to put it together. I have a collection of songs that I've been trying to workshop as a theater piece. They're, more like monologues and narrative stories. And that collection, it might not be the catchiest title, but it's called Red Beets and Horseradish. Have you ever eaten red beets and horseradish?
Red beets, no. Horseradish, yes, because that's required every time I eat roast beef. And I learned that horseradish actually neutralizes the acid in your system, so you don't bloat, get sick, or whatever it is. I'm not a medical person, but I learned that trick, and I thought horseradish I'm not a fan of, but I realized it is essential and actually works.
Well, it's interesting. My mother's side of the family is of Slovakian descent. Actually, they're even more particular than that. They're Carpatho-Rusin, a very particular little ethnicity. But most of the ethnicities from Eastern Europe, whether you're Polish or Serbian or Hungarian, they have this dish that's usually served around Easter or Passover. I don't know what its name is ethnically, but it's a blend of minced beets with horseradish, and in the religious context, it represents the red of the beets represents the blood of our Savior, and the horseradish the bitterness of his suffering. Like the Serbs, who they're still mad about a war that they had back in the Middle Ages. It's the blood of their people and the bitterness of their suffering. And for people of Jewish heritage, the red is just for flavor because they don't consume anything related to blood, but the bitterness is symbolic of the bitterness of their suffering while they were in bondage in Egypt. So anyhow, all of the songs are kind of set in the river towns around western Pennsylvania. They used to be steel towns, but then everybody moved away, and the only people left are people who were too poor, too crazy, or too stubborn to move. So it's a song about old, poor, crazy, and stubborn. It's all songs about old, poor, crazy, and stubborn people. So I have that. I have a bunch of rock songs ready to record. I'm not really sure how we're going to follow up Undesirables and Anarchists, because on the one hand, we want to build off of its success. On the other hand, I want to go in a completely different direction. I really have an affinity right now for, I don't know if you ever heard an Irish group called the Chieftains.
Yes, I have. One of my favorites, believe it or not. And I was actually influenced when they had Roger Daltrey on. I said, these guys are amazing.
Oh, yeah. That they have such a huge sound, and it's all acoustic. I wish I could capture that. And I'm thinking, well, what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to have to find some kind of Irish band or Appalachian band or something to back me up on some of those songs to get that sound. But it's enormous and it's powerful. And so I'd like to do that. So I'm not really sure. It's weird. Well, the first hurdle we have to get over is this lockdown and this quarantine. Mm-hmm. I'm a very healthy person. I understand that if you have medical conditions and you have to be very careful. You have to protect. It's like a boxing match. The referee says, protect yourself at all times. I know you have to protect yourself, but I'm ready to get back out in public, and I want to perform for live audiences. So how that unfolds, it'll probably start off with me playing acoustic shows. And I live in the Philadelphia area now, although my heart is still in Pittsburgh. But, my goal is to wake up in the morning thinking about where I'm playing tonight. I have a lifetime of really good songs and stories, and a whole lot of people out there that haven't had a chance to hear them yet. And also, just from a money-making standpoint, live performances, you make most of your money from merchandise, from T-shirts and CDs and ticket sales. So, I know a lot of performers are putting out the little PayPal thing when they do virtual concerts, but I want to play for real live people, man. Come on. So hopefully in 2021, all of this positive work that I'm accomplishing with Undesirables and Anarchists, I'll have a chance. I will have sowed the seeds. I will have laid the groundwork for making people want to hear me live, because that's really what I want to do. There is nothing like reading the crowd, looking in their eyes, and just kind of your heart telling you, I know what I need to say right now. I know what song I need to play right now that is just right for the moment.
And that is very true as well, too. You've got some great inspiration, Bob. Very greatly appreciated. And who do you consider biggest influences in your career?
In my career, I mean, you talking about artistically speaking or from like a business standpoint?
It can be either or, artistic, business, personal, lifestyle, general. It can be anything.
Well, that's really hard to say because my influences are a composite. I often say musically, all those records that all my uncles and aunts and older cousins had when I was growing up, whatever thread runs through all of that music, that's my influence. And you probably remember when you turned on the radio, you could hear a hard rock song right next to a folk rock song, right next to a surf song. And it didn't sound out of place. Now everything is so compartmentalized and put in a niche. But, I take the culture as a composite, and the whole thing influences me. If anything, I'd have to say Patti Smith, because she what she does is, she became famous by taking classic rock and roll songs that anybody could play, like Land of a Thousand Dances and Mustang Sally and Gloria, and putting her own poetry on top of it. So it's like the folk tradition, take something old and make it new. So that's a big influence on me. And, the poet and playwright Sam Shepard, the poet and playwright from Germany, Bertolt Brecht. Those are my big influences, really. But my biggest influence, my parents, my grandparents. At a certain point, when I started to move out of rock and roll and into more folk style music, and I asked myself, what is folk music? Well, folk is what's passed down from generation to generation. So I started off just by writing songs about my parents and grandparents. When I was a kid, one of my favorite things was on holidays when all the old people would be sitting around the kitchen table, drinking wine or drinking whiskey and talking about the old days. And I'd be, sitting there pretending that I was playing, but I was really listening to them. And a lot of the old people had accents, and I just sucked that all in. And I felt so honored to be able to take the stories from their old days and pass them on to generations to come. So that's really what I want to do. I want to pass along the stories of the people that I'm fortunate to meet in this life, and hopefully, pass it on to the next generation. Let's face it, nobody's going to remember my name. Nobody's going to remember the Little Wretches. 100 years from now, maybe they'll remember the Beatles. But most of us, all we can hope to do is contribute a little bit to the spirit of the culture. Honor our maker, honor our parents, honor thy father and mother, darn it.
That's very true as well. And what's the best advice you can give to anybody at this point?
The best advice is, one, prepare. A lot of people, one of my bandmates, Ellen Hildebrand in the Little Wretches, she has, she coaches a basketball team and operates a farm out in western Pennsylvania, out in Greene County. But when she regularly performed with me, one of her slogans was, I think it was a quote from Abraham Lincoln, "I will prepare and maybe my chance will come." You have to do the work. If you don't do the work and you don't do the preparation, guaranteed when opportunity arises, you won't be able to take advantage of it. You have no idea how many opportunities you've missed because you weren't prepared. So do the work and don't look back. I even think there's a line in the Bible about that. Do the work, don't look back, and you will be blessed for your efforts. So that's my biggest effort. If you feel that you have a calling, go for it. One of my little nieces, when we used to have band rehearsals, we were supposed to be babysitting for her, but we were really rehearsing. So we gave her a little harmonica, a little drumstick to bang with. And she was actually pretty talented. She was, the rhythm she was playing on the harmonica actually fit in with the song we were rehearsing. So we take a little break and everybody looks at her and says, "Oh, what do you want to be when you grow up?" And she says, "Well, what I really want to be is a singer, but I'm going to go to beauty school so I have something to fall back on."
That's
oh man, who put that crazy idea in your head? If you give yourself something to fall back on, you will fall back. If you give yourself an escape route or a safety hatch, you're guaranteed to take it when things get tough. The world literature is full of stories of people who set out on a mission and then gave up when they were one day from its completion. You're 1 mile from your destination and you run out of energy. If you knew there was only 1 more mile to go, you'd be able to suck up that energy and you'd go for it. Just don't worry about the result. Whatever you do, put yourself into it 100% and do not quit.
That is very good point, Bob. Once again, Bob Wagner of the Little Wretches here on the Mike Wagner Show. Bob, a very big thank you for your time. You've been absolutely fantastic. Looking forward to having you on again very soon. And once again, tell us about your upcoming projects. What's your website? How do people contact you? Where can people purchase or listen to your music?
Well, you can get our music downloaded just about anywhere. Apple Music, Spotify, Amazon Digital, pretty much anywhere you go to find downloads, we're there. If you want a vinyl copy of the album, because it has a beautiful cover, it's really a cool cover, hand drawn, a sketch that somebody left on a tabletop that I picked up and was just saving for the day that we put this album out. If you want to order the album, you got to go through the website, littlewretches.com, or you can find us on Facebook, Facebook/Little Wretches, or, just do a search for Little Wretches. You'll find it. And then we're all over YouTube. There are hundreds of hours of live performances on YouTube. Some really classic shows. Back when people had camcorders, before they had cell phones, I had no idea how precious this would become when we had friends and followers that would come to our shows and make videotapes. And I'm thinking, wow, these guys are treating us like this actually matters. And now it's like, yeah, you know what? It does matter. And that stuff will exist for anybody who wants to see it. So look for us on Facebook, YouTube, anywhere. And, what they always say, just like, comment, share. If you like what you hear, share it with somebody. There's a quote from Bertolt Brecht that from the new transmitters came the old stupidity. Wisdom was passed on from mouth to mouth. If you find something good, you got to pass it on because you can't trust the media to do it for you.
That is so true. Once again, Bob, a very big thank you for your time. It's been absolutely fantastic here on the Mike Wagner Show. Looking forward to having you again soon. Do us a favor, keep us up to date. Love you back on sometime in 2020, 2021, and beyond. You've been great.
Thank you, Mike. Us Wagner's got to stick together.
The Mike Wagner Show is powered by Sonic Web Studios. If you're looking to start or upgrade your online presence, visit www.sonicwebstudios.com for all of your online needs. Sonic Web Studios specializes in custom web design, app development, social networking, search engine optimization, domain registration, email marketing, online stores, and more. Since our birth, we have been designing and developing immaculate websites and providing web solutions which are a cut above the rest. As a leading web designing enterprise, we have a team of extremely talented web designers who are well-focused and have the experience of working on multiple web developing platforms such as PHP, Magento, custom WordPress, and more. Sonic Web Studios has been helping businesses of all kinds, whether big, small, established, or startup, impress their audiences with exemplary web solutions. We don't just create beautiful and functional websites. We give you a complete online solution with the main goal of enhancing your yearly revenues. We aim to give your business the online exposure and brand acknowledgement that will help you in achieving increased conversions leading to profitable sales. Call 1-800-303-3960 or visit us online at www.sonicwebstudios.com to get started today. Mention the Mike Wagner Show and get 20% off your project. Sonic Web Studios. Take your image to the next level.
Thanks for listening to the Mike Wagner Show, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. The Mike Wagner Show can be heard on Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, iTunes, YouTube, Anchor FM, Radio Public, and themikewagnershow.com. Please support our program with your donations at themikewagnershow.com. Join us again next time for another great episode of The Mike Wagner Show.